Okay, let's take this a little bit further. Well, certainly we need some logos on here. So what I'm going to do is place a logo right on the hood. And if I select the material of the car body, what we can do, and I was playing around with it here, let's delete that. I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so real simply, we want to add an image map, right? No big deal. So we'll go to Add Layer, make sure that the car body material is selected, Add Layer, Image Map, Load an Image. And then with your course, there is a Moto logo in the Images folder. Add that up, and by default, you're going to see this thing just place all over it. So select the image, go to Texture Locator. It defaults to UV map, which we're not doing here. We just need it flat on the hood, which is up and down on the y-axis, and we'll click Auto Size. Well, now it's sized to the whole car. Well, that's not what we want. So we have to kind of figure out, okay, well, a little bit of this, and then like this, and then flip it, and we could do that. You can see it right there. We'll turn off repeat. Okay, and now with repeat, that's the main image. It's actually on the roof, which could work, but we want to put it on the hood. So I have to move it on the Z, and you can, well, kind of see what a hassle this is, right? Well, there's a better way to do this. Now, typically what I've done in the past, before some of these cool tools in Moto, I would just essentially select an area, create a new material group, copy the material, and then paste things in. But you can do it a little simpler today, which also lets me show you this one thing I wanted to show you. Select polygon, select this next one, and then right mouse and click, and you'll select all the polygons in between. Right mouse, right mouse, right mouse. Oh, too much on that one, and that's okay. And then, like I showed you before, Control Shift, double click, it could fill that in. So just cool different ways to select if you don't feel like running your mouse across. So this is really where I want the logo. I think I actually want to place it up here as well. Well, again, I can press M, create an entirely new material called hood, not hoof, and copy and paste that logo on there. That's fine. A little extra work. Really what I'm going to use is use my selection. So I'll go up to select, and I'm going to assign a selection set called hood. Okay? We'll deselect those. I'm going to change this car body material group to the hood. So take a look. So this material group right here, everything's done with polygon tags and tag types. Now by default, we never change this. This is the way Moto works because it knows that's what we want to do. We've got the car body, the item just defaults to all, but we could specifically say this in NASCAR, but that's okay. The polygon tag type, it's a material. What is the tag? Well, it's the car body. That's the actual material. Well, if I went to selection set, look what happens. It goes to white. Well, what is my selection set? It's called hood. So now that material is only applied to that selection set. And if I take this logo, go back to Texture Locator, and auto size it, but it fits right in there. And we may have to squeeze it down a little bit. So I'm going to click twice on my gang select and click and drag that down a bit. That's pretty good. Now it's a little bit backwards, so we're going to select the Z and put negative for the value. And that's just going to flip it that way, and then we're going to do a positive on the X. And that just flips it the right way for the size. Okay, so it's almost like it was sized inside out. And I'm going to save, so I don't have to do that again. Great. Okay, but what happened to the rest of the body? Well, this material and this logo is going to the hood, which is great, but that hood now is set to selection set. So all I have to do is just right-click, duplicate this material group. I'm going to rename this back to car body. I'm going to select this material group and drop it into the car body. And then that car body, go back and change this to material, and the tag is car body. Okay, so you don't have to rebuild surfaces. You don't have to rebuild material groups. We don't need this second logo either, by the way. Let's delete that. And we don't have to worry about complex UV maps for just placing a logo on. And we don't have to deal with size it a little bit this way, size it a little bit that way, size it a little bit more, and so on. We just use material tags and polygon tags and selection sets. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to leave it up to you to go ahead and place some on the door using the same kind of technique. But I do want to go one step further with this. So I'm going to zoom in really close. And again, just, using Moto's powerful tools to create a little bit more realism. The logo looks great on there, but when I select that material, you're going to see it says anti-aliasing. Now, typically we like anti-aliasing, but on an image I don't, and here's why. Anti-aliasing is sort of a blurring, right? It's more math and algorithms and that than more than I can explain here. But what it'll do, it'll smooth out rough edges. Well, that's great, but when we go to render, we definitely want anti-aliasing on for the geometry itself. If our image has anti-aliasing and our scene has anti-aliasing, sometimes these images can get a little bit blurry. So I like to turn that off entirely. Keep that image sharp and let the final rendering do my anti-aliasing. It's just a preference I like. The other thing is that, well, this is fine for 99% of everything you do, but why not take it a little bit further? So I'm going to right click on the image, and I could duplicate it, but because I'm not going to manipulate that copy, I'm just going to make it an instance. We're going to create an instance. And when you make an instance, you'll see that it is actually a italicized version. And what that means is anything I do to this base image will translate to this image. So if I size it, change the value of the opacity, anything else, it'll translate into that bump. So I don't have to do it twice. And I just said bump, which means I want to go like this. I want to go down here to my surface shading and change the effect to bump. So you right click in this column and change it to bump. But look what happens. It pushes it down. We're also telling this image to use the alpha channel. Instead, I'm going to say alpha only. That's all I want. The alpha channel is the transparent background. This is a PNG image. So this looks really good, but I actually want it to come up so it looks like paint more than, a branding iron. So we're just going to click invert. Again, the image is selected to get this properties. Hit invert. And this value here, if you take a look at the car body, down here under bump amplitude, it defaulted to 10 millimeters. That actually is just the right amount that we need. But I'll tell you, if you put this to, let's say, 50 millimeters, you're going to get a much thicker bump. We don't really want that. We don't want it that thick. You want just a subtle amount. If you can't really see it, sometimes you can go to 1 meter and see how much more you can get out of it, but that's not really doing much. You can also take a look at this one down here as well, but the bump is actually controlled from this one. And in fact, we should call this hood. That's that. All right, so the bump value here, 30 millimeters, that material group is then feeding up to this bump. So the effect of this image is a bump. What that means is where the white values are pushes up and where the dark values are pushes down. And you get this nice kind of decaled look on here. It's very subtle, but just helps to add a little bit realism to the car, especially when it's animated with full anti-aliasing and lights come across it and everything else. It's subtle, but works for it. All right, so very simple materials, an image map, transparency, reflections. It's all looking great. Let's go on and do just a little bit more, and I'll show you how to create a cool looking ground, and we'll take it from there.